Got this crappy silver tone. We're gonna test all of its functions, see what's not working, and then try and do a little bit of a revamp, potentially hot rod this thing, maybe sell it at the end of it all, but essentially I just want to get this thing working. So let's give it a shot and see what happens. Okay. Okay. So this switch is dirty, kind of not good. Volume knob works fine. Okay. Okay, so it's wired up. Neck tone, middle tone. I'll probably bridge this so it does the bridge pickup tone as well, just because I think that's a little bit cooler than how it is right now. So let's see, do I have any spare strings? Medium, 11 to 52. Definitely not what I'm shooting for, but that's what I got. So we're gonna throw this old pack of Dean Markleys on there. Take my trusty electric drill thing. This thing is the key. So how I like to do this is, I don't have this set up perfectly yet. I don't know what I'm doing exactly, but anyway, I got the strings nice and loose. What I like to do is cut them right behind the nut. These are chewed up snips, so they don't really want to cut sometimes, but I like doing that because then your little these guys are short enough to like keep organized and deal with, and then these guys are long enough to wind up and go in the trash can or wherever you're putting them in a much better than normal way. I try and take them all out at once, not leave one behind. So I take the ball ends of the cut strings and get them all squared up so they're about, they're pretty much in the same spot. It doesn't need to be unbelievably perfect. But then what I do is I'll grab them like this, and then you give it the 2 loops, and then you fish it through as many times as you want or can, and so it doesn't come undone. This is a real good way to wind them back up like they were in the package when they were new. Then you can just throw them away. It's a lot harder to get poked and stabbed. They won't be sticking out of a trash bag as easily. And then for the headstock, I just take my little, these are my favorite pliers, but I just take some pliers, needle nose, grab it right near the tuning post, and then you just pull it out. Okay, so I'm gonna unplug this for now. This is all wound up, so what I'm gonna do is try and undo these winds. It's gonna be a little bit more distance for the wires, and they just don't need to be wound up like that. That was a mistake, I think. I'm going to take my little flush snippies. I'm gonna remove the ground to like the claw. Oh, geez. Oh, it's a swimming pool route. So technically speaking, you could, if you had a pickguard that had space for 3 humbuckers or whatever, you could theoretically, however many pickups you could fit in here, you could set it up for. Keep this out of the way. But I want to show, well, I'm going to redo this output jack anyway, so I'm going to cut that off too. But check this out. This is, I don't even know what you call this type of 5-way switch, actually. I've never, you know, I rarely see them. They're definitely not common, at least anymore. So, clearly, this middle lug is the out because it's going to the master volume. Each one of these pickups is going to have its own ground and its own hot, so obviously those are the ins for the pickup on this side. 1, 2, 3, output, and then here's the connected, how do you say it? Whatever position the switch is in, meaning whichever of these inputs is being activated, it has a corresponding set of outputs. So obviously the fact that this has nothing on it is why the tone knobs do nothing to the bridge pickup, which we're going to modify. It's really easy. All you got to do is add a jumper across these two, and then this middle tone pot will control both the bridge and the middle pickup once you connect those two. So this switch needs to go. Like I said, we're removing these 2 screws. We're gonna drop this out. We're not gonna cut the wires or unsolder anything. I don't even have my iron on at the moment. We're just going through the basics. The first steps, if you will. So again, we're just pulling this out of the way. Good rule of thumb is, I call it the flat side, if you will. This is the orientation that I would match. If it's got the steel plate, match it with the steel plate. This is actually like a circuit board, like type of material, but I call that the flat side. So I would orient these all the same way, what I would call the same way. So we scoot this, put this through, and this looks like it's gonna fit. Okay, this soldering iron is definitely heated up enough, so I'm just going to take all this shit off. I don't have any, you know, cloth wire, which would be technically kind of like ideal. It's just nicer, it looks a little nicer. What I do have is some good old-fashioned black and white, what is this, 22 gauge stranded wire. So that's what I'm gonna use. We're gonna use black for ground, because that's kind of traditional, and then we're gonna use white for hot, because that's also just how this one's already set up. Alright, well, hopefully that's super clear. I kind of can't tell just because the angle's weird. I've never done this before, so whatever. Let me, I'm gonna get some sort of pointer real quick. How these work is you've got, we're gonna call this side A, we're gonna call this side B, right? There's the two sides, A1, A2, A3, and A0. On the opposite side, you've got B0, B1, B2, B3. First thing we have to do is we have to bridge the 2 0 tabs together. Finish that off as close as I can. And what I'll do is I'll bend it, and then it comes off. So anyway, twist this up, what I'm gonna do is, with this specifically, I'm just gonna lay it flat across here. And then after it's soldered on right there, I'm gonna measure, cut just past this tab that I'm bridging to, and then do the same process with this, remove it, blah, blah, blah. I'm gonna re-tin my tip. I'm going to heat up the tab and the wire, hold it in place until it kind of goes not shiny. It doesn't necessarily have to be like super dull, because that's usually a sign of a cold solder joint or something. But anywho, I got it soldered on. What I'm gonna do is take my little flush cuts. I love these little things. I'm going to flush cut about a 32nd of an inch. It doesn't have to be that precise, but that's kind of what I'm shooting for. And then what I like to do as well, is since I'm using a razor blade, to try and get it even, I kind of butt the razor blade up to the tab that I'm soldering to and give it its first cut. Finish off the cuts. You are obviously more than welcome to use a wire cutter. This is not an efficient way to go about this, technically speaking, but I feel like I have a little bit more control over what I'm doing, and I just don't really like how many wire strippers operate or feel. I'm just gonna try, yeah, I'm just making the end of that look a little bit nicer. It's not the worst, but whatever. So give this a little bit of a twist. I'm gonna tin the tip. We're going to tin the end of the wire itself, as well as, again, the tab that we're going to be attaching it to. Get this stuff all ready. We're going to put the bridge pickup on this tab, middle on this, neck on this, and then on this side, this is going to be the neck tone, middle tone, and then we're going to just bridge this with a solid piece of wire. It doesn't need to be fancy, it doesn't need to have insulation on it even, as long as nothing else is going to touch it. But what that's going to do is make it so the tone knob that's currently only taking care of the middle is, after we bridge this, going to take care of both of these pickups simultaneously. They won't have individual tone knobs, but considering they're both very bright pickups compared to the neck pickup, it's fine. It's a very common modification. So I think for this, I want to do the tones first. We will get to the master out here in a second. I'll explain that when the time comes. I'm just turning that so the wire's a little bit closer, have a little bit more lead to work with. Neck pickup tone, I'm just going to fish this wire through this tab. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply heat to the back side and solder to the front side. Just make sure that wire ends up inside the all the solder that's there and touching the metal of the tab itself, because despite how conductive solder is, if the wire that you're attaching to whatever isn't physically touching that piece when the solder is, you know, cooled off, dried, whatever you want to call it, stuck, solid, it might not make a solid connection, and you definitely want it to be touching the piece instead of floating off with solder in between. It's just trust me, you're gonna want that. This wire is unfortunately just a hair too small, so we're gonna have to replace that one. No big deal. For this one, I think, just considering the fact that it's kind of still a hot wire, we're gonna stick with the white wire. So I'm gonna follow the same exact situations before. Tin the lead of this wire. Cool, so there's actually like a little baby glob of solder at the end of that. It's probably hard to see. Tin again. Tin and tin again. And then we're gonna just heat that up, put that in there, make sure it's touching the tab, like the wire itself is touching the tab. Hold it till it's done. And then, just to kind of make it a little bit nicer, I'm going to follow the curve of this thing. This wire right here. I'm going to measure with my thumbnail pretty much where I want to cut it, so I can take my flush cutters, put them up against my thumbnail. What I'm going to do is just get this ready. I'm going to tin it because I already got it cut. What I'm actually going to do first is I'm going to bridge these two tabs together like I said I was going to do. Once we bridge these together, whatever I attach to that will be connected to both positions, or whatever position connects these tabs together, even if it was independent. So what that means is I need to make a bridge, a jumper wire. So I'm just going to take a length of this. I'm going to do the same process as before. This is a little thing I like to do because this is stranded wire. It's, from what I understand, it's got a better, it's better as a conductor than solid core wire. So all I'm going to try and do is I'm pretty much going to turn this into a solid wire. Same thing. You don't really need too much exposed because I'll show you in a second. Tin the end of this wire. And that's going to essentially act as glue. So now what I want to do, this you can be a lot more ham-fisted and cavemanish about, but I'm just going to make it, cut it to be longer than the distance between these two tabs, right? So I'm going to remove the insulation from the entire thing. So now we're going to have what was inside that wire. Twist it up, make sure it's all good. We're basically going to try and turn this into a solid piece of wire. So how I like to do that is, again, clean the tip, tin the tip. I try and get like a bubble of solder on it like this. And then I'm going to hold it to the end of the wire, and then I'm going to follow the wire with the solder as the whole thing heats up. Hopefully that'll be obvious in the video itself, but basically it's a good way to do the whole thing. And then to finish that off, there's that little empty space right there. I'm gonna let this cool off for a second because it's gonna be real fucking hot. I'm gonna switch the spot, and then we're gonna just finish this off. So the whole entire wire has solder soaked all the way through. As few bubbles as possible, just make it look good. We've got our de facto solid wire. I'm going to add a 90-degree bend in it with my my favorite needle noses. You're going to test fit it, and you're just basically dry fit it. And then from here, you can kind of at least get an idea of where it needs to be bent. I'm going to try and make it precise and grab it, and then bend it again. So essentially, you end up with what equates to basically a staple shape. Trim this to where it's roughly the same size. And now you can drop your staple thingy in here and move this wire out of the way so it doesn't melt, ideally. Okay, cool. So now this is going to be jumped together, or this is jumped together. Now, when I add this wire from the middle tone pot to this set of jumped lugs, both the bridge and the middle pickups will have a tone control. Simple as that. So now, the last bit for in here, for the most part. It's going to be reconnecting these individual hot wires from the pickups to these 3 tabs back here. It's going to be a bridge middle neck. So I'm going to clean this off so I can see what the heck's going on. Okay, thought so. We are going to essentially plug this thing into this tab. Okay, there's that one. Clean. 10. Heat and solder. We're going to do this for all the rest of the pickups. Heat on one side of the tab, solder on the other. With this one, I'm going to tin the entire thing first because this wire doesn't seem like it's going to want to stay in place. So I get the solder ready on that side. Grab this wire, and then when I get the solder warmed up again, I put it through the melted wet solder till it's solid. It would have made a lot more sense for me to apply this hot through here first, which I didn't do because I didn't plan this out all that well. What I'm going to do now is try and do that and not let this bridged wire pop off, ideally, which may just be part of it, and that's fine if that happens. It's the fun part about wiring is as long as you've got the components, extra wire, you know, this is a little short, but you know, it is what it is. It's nice and clean looking kind of in here, considering how shitty it is. But if this comes off and melts and gets all screwed up, we just make another jumper wire. So I'm going to clean, tin. I'm going to switch hands just so I can maybe do this a little bit better, or a little bit more, with a little more dexterity. I'm going to do that. Oh, that's the goal anyway. This is bent out of the way, so I'm going to try and straighten this up just a hair. See if I can't come in from the bottom. And I think that went through. Feels like it, looks like it. I think we're good. This now should, fresh wire. This is now bridge tone and middle tone, neck tone, volume, new switch, blah, blah, blah.